You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the Morphology Podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week we will get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? On this episode, meet Kim, who recently completed an epic solo bikepacking adventure by completing the Katy Trail on her bike after being inspired by a female colleague who did the same adventure a while back. At nearly 240 miles long, the crushed limestone Katy Trail spans nearly the full width of Missouri and is the country's longest continuous rail trail, intersecting with rural farmland, scenic small towns, and centers of commerce and government on its route, paralleling the Missouri River. And if you listen to episode 89 with Kevin Belanger from the Rails to Trail Conservancy, we talked a bit about the Rail Trail Hall of Fame, and back in 2007, the Katy Trail became the second member in the Rail Trail Hall of Fame. Kim, who is a well-versed solo female traveler, took a little over 5 days to pedal from Clinton, Missouri to Machens, Missouri, staying in hotels and bnbs along the way while carrying everything she needed in her waterproof and dustproof Ortlieb bike panniers. So here is Kim to talk about her Katy Trail bike adventure. All right, well, on the show today we have Kim. Hey, Kim.
Hi.
I decided that you needed to be on the podcast because on social media, I saw that you recently did an epic solo adventure, and hopefully you are willing to share with the listeners.
I did, and I've only been back a week, so I am very anxious to share it.
Yeah, it's all fresh in your head. Okay, so before we spill the beans on what your adventure is or was, will you tell the listeners a little bit about where you live and what the culture for bikes is?
Well, I currently live in Houston, Texas.
Oh, okay.
And the culture for bikes is actually quite poor. There's a big movement on to make people more aware of cyclists. Unfortunately, just this past weekend, there was a very serious accident where somebody rammed a group of cyclists training for an Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's difficult here. There are a lot of paved trails, though, and that's really good. The one that I ride the most is about 15 minutes from my house. It's called the Spring Creek Greenway. And if you go from end to end, it's 35 miles. And the great thing about it in Houston is that it's almost all shaded.
Oh, nice.
So paved and shaded.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I live in Iowa, so, in the summertime is when most people are outside, but I did live in Dallas, Texas for a while, and it was, I'd be the only one out in the middle of July or August
Yes.
because everyone's like, what are you doing? It's, so
Yes.
hot. So you're probably just getting into your cool, the good biking season.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. So it's like this week, it's going to be in the 80s all week. So that's like a big deal here.
Sure, yeah. Well, I want to get into, you recently completed an epic solo adventure of biking on the Katy Trail, and I am part of a Facebook group that I believe that you were doing
when I posted about my journey.
Yeah, you did
day?
a recap,
Oh, yes,
and
I did do that.
absolutely loved it. And the photos were so fun. I'm like, oh my gosh, A, I want to do this, and then B, I want to meet this woman. So here we are.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I know where the Katy Trail is, but for people that maybe don't know, do you want to give a little bit of a highlight about the trail itself? And then we're going to go from there and get into your adventure.
Sure. It runs from, west to east. It would run from Clinton, Missouri to a place called Machens, Missouri, if I'm pronouncing that right. It's Machens. Most people just quit at St. Charles, Missouri, which is a huge kind of city suburb of St. Louis. It's a very nice place to end it. So it goes basically right through the center of Missouri. about 240 miles.
Nice. And I've done the Katy Trail several times, but it was just a portion of it. And we would start in St. Charles. And let me tell you what a beautiful little town that is. There's like, bed and breakfasts and all kinds of restaurants and bars. And I really enjoyed it.
I did too. I felt like that was such a great find. I actually went to university at St. Louis University.
Oh, okay.
Way back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. But I had never been to St. Charles and didn't know about that little jewel. It's actually a place I would like to go back to.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so Katy Trail is located in Missouri, like you mentioned. How did you decide this is going to be the place where I go on a solo bike adventure?
Well, I had gone on supported overnight rides. That's where like a company kind of supports you in a group, and they make the hotel reservations and they kind of do everything for you. And that's awesome. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But about 4 years ago, I had a colleague who was just getting ready to retire. And right before she retired, she did this. And I was just so impressed with her. And she was this total badass because she camped. She solo camped all along the way to the Katy Trail.
Yeah.
Yes. So this just stuck in my mind. And I recall as she's telling about this 4 years ago, I recall thinking, I'm doing this no matter what, I am doing this.
And like you said, it's 240 miles, right? From end to end?
That's correct.
Awesome. And you mentioned your friend, camped and did all of that, out in nature. Did you do something similar?
I didn't camp. I don't know the first thing about camping, although I would love to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed in small local bnbs along the way.
Awesome. But were you carrying all your gear on your bicycle?
Yes.
Wow.
And that was quite a challenge. I'm a very experienced solo traveler, so I'm really great at packing light. But packing light and knowing I had to carry it in my panniers on my bag, that was a challenge. I laid everything out before I left and just pared it down from there.
Yeah, I will tell you from my own experience, it is an art to figure out how to carry all your stuff and how to lighten the load because,
Yes.
you get to the point where everything's laying out and you're like, do I really need 3 sweatshirts for this adventure?
Exactly.
And then you're like, but that's my favorite one. And that I like, maybe I'll bring 2.
If?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. What if it's, 10 degrees? What if it's 90
Yes.
degrees? So I do feel your pain on that one. So what is the terrain like on the Katy Trail?
It is, they call it crushed limestone.
Mm-hmm.
I found it to be quite a bit more gravelly than that. And I don't know if it was because it was very dry, which is great, but I found it to be quite a bit more gravelly. I actually wiped out one day. It was my only wipe out. But I just kind of, how on a bike you just get kind of caught in the gravel sometimes and you have a little wreck. So that was a little bit of a rude awakening for me because I have no experience at all riding on that kind of terrain.
Oh, sure.
So I lived in Europe for several years, and bicycling there is very different than in the U.S. It's quite a respected way of travel, and everything is always paved, even like trails that go through the middle of nowhere in the country. They're always paved. So I have no experience riding on anything but pavement. And on crushed limestone / gravel, there's no coasting.
Right. And
it's all pedaling.
You're on a rail trail, if I recall. So, it's kind of a hidden, what am I trying to say? The hills are kind of hidden because it's only maybe 1 or 2% grade at some times. And you're like, oh my gosh, I just can't stop pedaling. And then,
Yes.
I don't know if you noticed that when you were pedaling.
Oh, indeed I did. So I have a bike computer that's telling me that this is only a 2% grade. I shouldn't be this tired. But it's a 2% grade that's been going on for the last 10 miles, it feels like.
Yeah. I saw somebody posted a map on some social media site of the Katy Trail, and it looks like, I can't recall which way, but in general, one way is a little bit more downhill than if you were going the opposite way. So do you know if you picked the right path?
Oh, I know. All right. This was not a mistake I was willing to make. So it's much better to go from west to east. That's Clinton, Missouri, to the St. Charles side. So I drove from Houston because I wanted to take my own bike. So I drove from Houston to St. Charles, and then I took a bike shuttle to Clinton to start it on that side.
Oh, nice. Okay. And was the bike shuttle something that was like advertised, or did you have to do some research?
I had to do a little research. They do this frequently, and interestingly enough, I asked the gentleman on the way there, like, are you going to pick up people from this side, and take them to the St. Charles side to start? I assumed that's how that worked. And he said that almost never happens. Almost no one does it that direction.
So everyone knows the secret about the
yes,
elevation.
I guess so. And here I thought I was so smart.
How long did it take you to do this?
A little over 5 days.
Oh, nice.
So I got a guidebook, and I kind of had divided up, a little bit what I wanted to see, and I just didn't want to be too rushed. So I did anywhere from 37 to 55 miles a day.
Okay. And what was like a typical day like? Obviously, if you had a bed and an ability to shower each day. So
yes.
how would you plan a typical day? A quick interruption to tell you this week's podcast is sponsored by Lizard Lips Lip Balm. These great lip balms contain natural ingredients, come in a variety of flavors, and you can choose certified organic or balms with sun protection. Check it out at lizardlips.net. Now back to the show.
Well, they were having quite a heat wave that week, so I wanted to be sure that I got an early start. So I got up very early and was hitting the trail no later than 7 a.m., which was about sunrise.
So then from there, you literally, whatever path you were taking, I'm assuming you already knew where you were going to be staying that night.
I did, which was a little pressure. Could be good, could be bad.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But if I was camping, I would not have had that pressure. But I knew that I had to make it to my next stop.
It does kind of change the dynamic of,
it does,
all right, no matter what,
surprisingly.
I have to go 43 miles today or whatever your
Yes.
mileage may be. Tell us a little bit about some of the towns that you went through. Like, do you recall any, like you mentioned, St. Charles is a place you want to go back to, but any other places that you're like, wow?
There was in Rocheport, there was the Merriweather Cafe. I think it's called Merriweather Bike Cafe. And that place was so cool. And they make homemade Pop-Tarts.
Ooh.
And yes, and they were out of them when it was my turn to stop by there. And I was so disappointed. So I would go back there for homemade Pop-Tarts.
I'd like to see what that looks like even.
I
because
couldn't tell you they were out.
real Pop-Tarts are a little bit cardboardy, but yet I still love them. So I can imagine homemade. Okay, my mouth is watering a little bit, but
yes.
And the other town that I think of when my small, experience on the Katy Trail was a town called Defiance. I feel like there was a restaurant or bar right on the trail. And if I recall, the inside of the restaurant/bar was full of like stuffed squirrels and stuffed foxes. And do you remember that place?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
However, it was closed.
Oh, no.
Which was a recurring problem.
Yeah, that's a bummer. So then were you savvy enough to find either gas stations or grocery stores to load up on food for the day?
I actually brought stuff with me because I had a hint that this would be a problem. And this was actually my biggest problem was it's kind of hard for me to visualize that there's not even going to be gas stations.
Yeah.
And there literally was not. So I had brought like packets of tuna, protein bars, some things with me. And I was so glad I did because locating food was definitely the hardest part.
Yeah. And, if you're going to stop and take a break on the trail, I don't recall this, but are there like benches along the way or obvious places that you can pull off?
There are, yes.
Okay.
And that was so nice because you could kind of see, sometimes there would be big rocks, but you could see where people had kind of walked the trail to it. So, it was like a scenic overlook kind of thing.
Okay. That's awesome. How about any either crazy or cool things that happened that were really memorable?
I saw a lot of the prettiest blue snakes. They were kind of iridescent. So, of course, I had to Google them, and they're called blue racers.
Mm.
And they were out everywhere. They were really magnificent. I think that a couple of not cool things happened that
Okay.
surprised me.
Okay.
um, I met a lot of people, not as many people as I thought there would be on the trail because the weather was so perfect. But it was kind of disappointing to me. I met many men who were doing it solo and several couples, but I didn't meet another single female
Oh, wow.
doing it. And that really surprised me and kind of made me feel sad because what a great experience. And gosh, I want to try to get the word out. I want to try to fix that. I just
Right.
couldn't believe of all the people I met, uh, not not another single female doing it, and women can do it too.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, with that said, how did you feel as far as being out there on your own? Were you ever a little bit nervous or fearful or anything like that?
No, not in the least, not for 1 second. Just people out cycling, and a lot of times, I mean, you would go for. Sometimes I went for hours and didn't see anybody,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, so that was also a little bit of a surprise. Like I say, because I didn't. There's several Facebook pages and they're pretty active,
Mm-hmm.
so I thought I would see people like all the time, and that definitely wasn't the case. Um, Another crazy thing that happened is I thought that when there's places that don't have a Wi-Fi signal, I thought that meant like maybe for a mile you won't have a Wi-Fi signal. I did not understand that this meant for hours you wouldn't have a Wi-Fi signal. I had no concept of that.
Welcome to the
So,
middle of nowhere, Missouri,
wow.
right?
I did not know there was any place like that, to be honest. Sounds kind of naive, but um, from from now on, and if I do it again, I would get one of those little, I think they're called like MiFi devices. I don't know. I researched them and I would carry that with me because that was a little bit unnerving for me, just a little bit. But
Sure.
no, as far as safety, not for 1 second did I feel unsafe.
Yeah.
And if I knew how to camp, I would definitely have camped and not have felt unsafe at all.
Nice. And you mentioned your bike computer showed elevation. So did it also have a map that would tell you how many miles you had to go till the next town?
No.
Oh, okay.
What a great idea, though.
But you at least started your day knowing, okay, I have about this much until we get there.
I did, yes. Very well planned.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I was going to ask, anything go wrong, besides the minor fall in the gravel, but anything go wrong as far as mechanical issues or weather related things?
Yes.
Oh boy.
So within the first 20 miles, I kid you not, the first 20 miles, I get a flat tire.
Oh.
And, oh, so I'm thinking, so I'm changing the tire and I'm thinking, like, is this a sign from the universe? Like, should I not go on? Should I just quit? Is this a sign? Who gets a flat tire 20 miles in to a 240-mile ride?
Oh,
And I
geez.
had put gravel tires on my bike. I rode a hybrid bike. I had taken the hybrid tires off, replaced them with specialized sawtooth gravel tires. I think they're 38 millimeter tires. So, I was well prepared
Hmm.
to get a flat tire that soon in, but I got it changed and went on my merry way.
That's it. Maybe it was the universe getting it out of the way. Let's do it the first
Yes,
day when she's fresh, and then we'll be
that's
done.
right. Get this done.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you mentioned it was warm or warmer than normal in Missouri, but what about any other weather issues?
I was so lucky to have not had any rain at all.
Mm,
It was extremely dusty um, because there hadn't been rain for a while. But I would just much rather have had that than rain.
yeah.
And it was kind of cool because so my friend who did this, former colleague who did this a few years ago, she had advised me to spring money for the Ortlieb brand panniers.
Mm, hmm.
Ortlieb, Ortlieb. I'm not affiliated with that company or anything, but she said if it rains, you have to have these because they are completely waterproof. And I remember before I left, I texted her and said, I just saw the price of these. Are you sure this is a necessity? And she said, spring for it. You will thank me later.
Yeah. And they
So
last forever.
yes. And so I could not believe in this incredible dust. I mean, I looked like a mummy every day. And the dust did not even get into my Ortlieb panniers. I could
Nice.
not believe it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's awesome. And so, speaking of panniers, I did not prepare you with this question, but did you bring any want items versus need items. Like, for example, something I throw in my bags, regardless of how much room I have, are Uno cards for when I'm biking with friends. Because it's just like a nice, you're at your campground and you'd really, you're just talking to each
That's
other. To
cool.
throw out the Uno cards and play a few games is fun for me. So I always I can make those fit somewhere. But did you have any
That's a cool
any
idea.
items, maybe a book or something that was like a luxury item?
Well, me being by myself, it would have been kind of weird to pull out the Uno cards,
Yes.
but I never go anywhere without my Kindle. So
Oh, perfect.
that
Yeah.
was a must. That was end of story. That has to go.
Yeah. Well, and a Kindle is much nicer than bringing 3 or 4 heavy books. So that
Oh
was
my
smart.
goodness, yes.
We kind of mentioned, favorite towns, but was there a favorite place on the trail that you were like, oh, the canopy's beautiful? Or like one place I really like on the Katy Trail is that huge rock cave almost. I don't know what it's
Yes.
called, but it's just
I don't either, but that's so cool.
so beautiful. But any other places that you're like, oh gosh, this is great?
There was yes, there was this random place, and maybe perhaps you being from Iowa, that's close to Missouri. I don't know why I would think you would know this, but so there was this place, and it had boats that were buried like halfway up, like boats.
Like on the shore?
No, in a yard, like in a field,
Oh,
not a yard, a field. And there was a lot of boats. I don't remember, maybe like 6 to 8 of them.
oh,
They were real colorful boats, but they were buried in the ground about halfway up, just sticking up out of the ground. There was no sign. There was just nothing, just random boats buried.
so like a boat graveyard almost.
Yes,
Huh.
exactly. It was so cool. I loved it how several of the houses that were right along the trail had placed bikes in the yard that were all painted and
Oh, yeah.
decorated. And I thought that was so cool.
That is awesome. The year that we went to some small town, and of course, I don't recall what it was, but that particular day, they were having some sort of parade for the town. And so we came upon this parade in action, and they're like, oh, jump in the parade. So we pretended like, the town was having a parade for us. But it was so fun because then, all these community people were interested in our bikes and all the stuff we had on the bikes and where we were going. And they were very proud of the Katy Trail. So I loved that.
Wow, that is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you think you would do this again? A quick interruption to give a shout out to Primal Wear. Cycling is their passion and apparel is their craft. So if you're in the market for a new jersey, bibs, mask, or any cycling apparel, go to primalwear.com and use code PRIMALMURPH to get 20% off your purchase. Yes, 20% off. Now back to the show.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I have other challenges on the horizon. This was a wonderful experience from start to finish, even including the stupid flat tire in the first 20 miles.
How about would you do a little research on how to camp and go that route? Maybe.
Every time I go to REI, do you know REI?
Yes, yep.
Outdoor. Okay. So I go there and I'm like really determined, I'm going to figure this out. And then I start looking at tents and sleeping pads and R values, and it just makes my head hurt. And then I just end up leaving.
Yeah. And I will say, especially if it's cool at night, I can fill up 2 panniers with just the camp stuff, like you said,
no.
the camp pad and then the sheet and then the blanket. And if you have a sleeping bag and the pillow and all that, so I call it credit card camping when you can just go to an Airbnb, and if you can afford it, having a good night's sleep and a shower every day definitely changes
Yes, I'm sure.
definitely changes the experience for the better.
Yes.
So you as a solo adventure bike packer and also as a female, what would you tell somebody who's considering doing the exact same thing you did?
I would say that absolutely go for it. And if you've never, I talk to women all the time, particularly women kind of in my age group. I'm 58, and the kind of the 50 plus crowd. And so I have women message me all the time about like, how do you get started? Because I'm a very experienced solo female traveler in general. And I think that if you haven't any experience, just start cutting out small. Just get comfortable going to a restaurant by yourself. Just take an afternoon and go to a restaurant across on the other side of town. Nobody's going to look at you and think, oh, wow, she doesn't have any friends. Take your Kindle, take a book with you so you have a distraction. And then just start out with day trips. Just drive to another town and cycle on the nice, easy in and out bike trail. And it's just so empowering. And I think it's so important for women to get that confidence level, and it just opens up your world. Because if I were to wait for my friends to go with me on trips, oh my gosh, I'd be waiting years.
Yeah.
I would never get it together.
And the photos that you posted showed that confidence. Like, I could tell you were having a blast. And it also just showed that you were fine being by yourself, and you were fine having fun. And your photos were very inspiring.
Including the one where I started out the day with this big happy face, and I ended up the day laying down with my arm over my eyes.
I think you were laying down on your back like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. But
what do I do? That was a 55-mile day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Do you have any, you kind of alluded, but do you have adventures on the horizon?
I do. I'm going the first week of December. I'm going dog sledding in Alaska.
Whoa.
And I can hardly wait. I'm dying. I don't want to wish my life away, but I'm dying to go dog sledding.
Wow. And I'm assuming at that point, dog sledding is literally on snow, right?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Because I've seen dog sledding on wheels, too, like where they're running with. Okay. So you're doing the real deal. Wow.
Yes.
So in a couple years, I'll interview you and you'll be like, I did a rod and.
And another thing, I have a curling lesson scheduled.
Ooh.
In Alaska. Yes. I discovered curling on the Olympics about 10 years ago, and it's the funniest sport I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of intensity, on either end of the athletes on either end of that sport.
I don't quite understand it, but
well, you'll learn.
Hilarious to watch, so I'm going to do this.
Oh, those are exciting adventures. And then maybe one day, Katy Trail again.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that, biking is still part of your life.
Oh, yes, definitely. My passion. I really want to go do the Gap, the Great Allegheny Passage, which you probably know. It's about, I think it's about 150 miles, and it connects with the C&O.
Yeah, I just did it 2 weeks ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm totally dying to do this.
We did it with the intention to start in Pittsburgh and end in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
But Hurricane Ida came through and flooded the C&O. So we had to stop at the end of the Gap, which was in Cumberland, which was it was an amazing, I highly recommend.
Really?
And it's very similar. There were many days when we said, we feel like we're on the Katy Trail because of the terrain and it's a rail trail as well. So I think, you should definitely put that on your list. And we want to go back and complete the C&O, without the flooding. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's a shame about the C&O because I've read it's a bit rough.
Yeah, it is.
So if it flooded that much, it's probably a little bit rougher.
Right, yeah. We did get to ride about 10 miles of it, and it is literally dirt and rocks. So a little bit of rain gives you mud and rocks. So yeah.
That's going to be a tough one.
I know, yeah. Well, before we go, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to, whether it be the colleague that inspired you to do this, or we mentioned Ortlieb, not because you are sponsored by them, but because they're a great bikepacking bag.
Yes, the colleague who that I mentioned, her name is Stephanie Hensel. And so not only did she inspire me to do this, she lives in Kansas City. She drove from Kansas City to meet me on the trail and ride with me for a day.
Nice. That's
She's
awesome.
retired. I have not seen her in a couple of years. So it was so cool of her to do that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, if anybody wants to follow you or see the adventures that you've been on or see more about the Katy Trail, is there a place that they can go to look?
Yes, and on Instagram. And it's KimPM1.
Excellent. And then I guess since we're talking about the Katy Trail, there are a couple of Facebook groups that are specific to the Katy Trail, so then you can experience what everybody else is seeing too. So I would recommend people go find that on Facebook, and that's exactly how I found you.
And that it is so helpful, people sharing information like that. That's why I tried to be real conscious about posting no matter how tired I was, because just sharing information, I think it helps everyone.
Yeah. Well, Kim, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And you definitely have inspired me to, Katy Trail, doing the whole thing has been on my bucket list for a while, but I wonder if I could squeeze it in this fall yet, because that would be so beautiful.
Oh, I bet it'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Well, listeners, that's it for this week. Thank you so much, Kim, for coming on to talk about your experience biking the Katy Trail. I hope this interview inspires someone out there who maybe has been waiting for friends and family to get the time to go on a multi-day bike ride, to listen to Kim when she says, absolutely go for it and plan that solo bike adventure. We mentioned a couple of Facebook groups focused on the Katy Trail. One is called Fans of the Katy Trail Group, and the other is called Katy Trail Rider Group. Both are great resources when planning your Katy Trail adventure. So email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting. Support my podcast at patreon.com/murphology. Visit my Instagram page for daily entertainment, and check out my website for all kinds of bicycle stuff. And a quick shout out to Simmons Electric for sponsoring this episode. I'll leave you with this quote from the Unwritten Book of Murphology. This quote comes from the Bay Area Ridge Trail Council. If there's one essential ingredient to creating trails and trail systems, it's people. All the land and financing in the world won't blaze a trail if there aren't people champion the project. Think about it.